So let's start off with another quote, okay? And the quote says, when you assume, you make an ASS out of you and me. Many of you have probably heard that quote before. And the reality is that making assumptions can create a lot of misunderstandings, lead to miscommunication, and all kinds of issues. And unfortunately, I see a lot of women making assumptions while in the dating process. And I see how it backfires on them in so many different ways. Okay. And again, that leads to disappointment, heartache, wasted time, entertaining men who don't belong in your life or no longer belong in your life, whatever the case may be. And of course, the goal for me is to help you avoid that. I don't want you making these assumptions and finding yourselves in these difficult situations. So I want to lay out some things that you should never assume with a man. All right. And listen, you should try not to assume things with people in general, but we're going to focus on men. We're going to focus on dating. And let's get to one of the biggest ones, if not maybe the biggest assumption you should never make with a man, and that is that he is officially your man. Okay? Now, listen, so many women meet a man, they start dating, and let's just paint the picture in this scenario where the man is behaving very boyfriend like, maybe even husband like he's doing for her, he's providing for her, he's calling, everything is on point. Okay? And because of this, one, the fact that you're enjoying yourself, and this seems to be going so well, many times a woman doesn't want to just flat out ask, what are we? What's really going on here? And instead, she may go ask a friend or whoever, like, what do you think about this? He's doing this. And they might make her feel like, oh, yeah, you're good, right? And so for her, it just feels safer to just assume, okay, we are together because clearly the way he treats me means we must be together. Only for months to pass, sometimes longer. And somehow the conversation finally comes up, and the man's like, I never told you I was your man. What are you talking about? Like, we were just enjoying each other. We were just going with the flow. I don't, I'm not a fan of the going with the flow thing. We were just dating. That's all. I didn't think, nothing of it. And of course, that leads to complete frustration and all kinds of issues. So, listen, there's a chapter in one of my books, He's Lying Sis, that says he acts like your boyfriend but doesn't want a girlfriend. All right. Or he doesn't want a girlfriend but acts like a boyfriend. Either way, this is actually more common than maybe some women realize. And a man can behave with you in this very loving, caring way, but that doesn't automatically mean he wants to be fully committed to you and obligated to you, because that's what really getting into an official relationship does. It's not about how we treat each other, because as I just explained, a man can treat you well outside of the official relationship dynamic, right? Outside of the marriage dynamic. But by not fully saying he's your man, by not committing, he's not fully obligated to you, and he is not committed to the point that he cannot entertain other options. Okay? So this is why you should not just jump to the assumption that because everything's great, we're together. No. You've got to be willing to discuss that. You have to be willing to ask, so where are we going with this? What are we? Even flat out ask, are we official right now? And the thing is this, if you're scared that by asking this question, it will run him away, then there's something wrong there, because if it does run him away, then that just means he wasn't serious about you. And I think what happened, is hit my spirit, so let me just speak on it. Because we got to be real with each other for a second. Even though a woman may desire a relationship, desire marriage, when someone is treating her so well, it's hard to want to walk away from that. It's hard to accept letting that go, even though the man is unwilling to give full commitment. Now, some of you might say it ain't hard for you, and you might have no problem cutting that man off. But for a lot of women, especially for the woman who maybe has had nothing but poor treatment from men, right? Has never experienced this, this is difficult. And so that fear of now having to let go of this wonderful experience paralyzes a woman and stops her from investigating or discussing things further because, again, she doesn't want to rock the boat. So I get it. I understand. And all I can do is pray that you're going to embrace, not find the strength, embrace the strength you have within you to do what is best. Because in the long run, though it might feel good right now, if it's not going to ultimately lead to where you belong, then you don't need to remain there. So, bottom line is, yes, do not assume he is your man. Don't just run with that. Have a conversation and make sure you two are on the same page. All right. So, another big assumption you should never make with a man is that he knows better. So, let me start with this example, right? And I think it might be less common now, but at one time it was very common and very prevalent. To where a woman meets a man, they start getting to know each other, but the communication is always through text, right? And I've had so many women come to me expressing their frustration that all this man does is text, and then in some situations end up cutting him off. And the mentality from the woman is, he should know better. Why should I have to tell him that he needs to stop texting me or he needs to call me rather than just always texting me, right? And I understand how a woman feels and why she views it that way. But as I've told those women in those situations, I'm going to tell you, common sense isn't always so common. That man doesn't always know better. And in this example of texting, you have to remember that the people that you come across and that you date have very likely had other experiences. And we don't know how much those experiences are shaping and impacting their perspective and how they show up in the dating and relationship process. So if that man has dealt with women who prefer texting, because there are women right now who will tell you, no, I love the texting. I prefer that. That's what they want. They don't need all the phone conversation, right? If that's all he's been exposed to and he's been led to believe, he may even fall into the trap of thinking this is what most women prefer. When he comes to you, he's not going to know better to not just text you, okay? And by simply expressing yourself, expressing your concern, saying, hey, listen, appreciate the communication, but I'm more of a phone woman, okay? And I feel like we need to talk more, or in person type of lady, right? And then, okay, cool. Now he hears this, and if he's serious, he'll adjust. If he's not, he will continue on with the same behavior. And if he continues on with the same behavior, okay, then by all means, walk away from the situation. But you got to be willing to talk. And again, I gave you this very simple example of texting, but this happens in so many different ways where people are just always quick to assume he should know better. He's a grown man. Another hit in my spirit moment. Listen, unfortunately, grown don't mean a damn thing. I'm sorry. And when I say grown, age doesn't mean much sometimes, in the sense that you got to realize age simply increases the chances that someone will have gained enough wisdom or understanding in life and how to handle things, right? But it does not guarantee it. Age does not guarantee maturity. Age does not guarantee wisdom. It guarantees nothing, all right? Because you could have a man who grew up very sheltered, wasn't out there dating. Maybe he was shy, whatever the case may be. So he hasn't had much exposure. So despite whatever his age is, he can still be far behind. He can be far behind someone, I don't know, 10 years younger than him, right? Like, you just never know with people, and people come from so many different backgrounds. So even that, it could be a cultural thing, right? If you meet a man who just came from a different country, how they do things over there may be very different than how we do things over here, how people commonly do things over here. There's so many different factors that can cause misunderstandings, disconnects, or a lack of understanding and wisdom about how to properly handle certain things. Okay. I even just give you one other example real quick. It was a married couple I was coaching, and uh, the husband was very rough with the way he spoke to his wife, right? And I had spoken to him like, listen, you need to exhibit more compassion. And he said to me, what's compassion? What do you mean compassion? Now that might sound foolish. Like, how does a man not understand what compassion is? Listen, you'd be surprised. He did not really understand how he's supposed to display that, how he's supposed to convey that, right? To him, even though I might talk rough, it's like tough love. It's like I do love her. I do care about her. It's not like I don't give a damn about how she feels. Yeah, but the way you come across doesn't allow her to feel that or receive that, right? And we had to work on him being more, how to be more compassionate in the way that he addressed things with her. So again, so that's a man who was married and he was grown, okay? It's just never guaranteed. So bottom line is, do not assume he knows better. Always be willing to talk about things. And then if it cannot be corrected and resolved, then move forward in a new direction. All right, so next assumption you should never make with a man is that you should never assume what his needs and desires are. Okay, so there's a joke I like to give where let's say a woman and a man, they've been together, married, long term, whatever, they've been together for a while, and let's say his birthday's coming up, right? And she asks the man, "What do you want for your birthday?" And he's like, "Baby, I don't need much. Let's just sit down, watch a movie. Let's have this favorite meal he loves, and I'm good. Like, I don't need nothing else." And the woman hears that, goes back in her corner, and she thinks to herself, "I'm gonna throw him a surprise party. I'm gonna buy him this." Like, it's like he just told you what he wanted, and you still go and assume that maybe you know better, or that somehow, no, that's not extravagant enough, or that's not sexy enough, or whatever the case may be, right? He deserves more than that. And it's like, no. And then to make matters worse, what happens is, so let's say in this scenario, she throws him the surprise party, right? And then when he sees the surprise party, he has this very dry reaction. And throughout the party, he's kind of disconnected, right? So afterwards, she's like, "What happened? What's wrong?" And he's like, "Man, I really just want to be by ourselves." And she feels like, "Dang, you don't appreciate my efforts. I did all this for you." And now she's upset at him, but he told her from the beginning he just wanted movies and some food. Probably some sex too, but we're gonna leave that part out right now. But either way, like, it was that simple for him. And so you gotta make sure in relationships, in dating, you don't assume what this man needs. Also, because this is it's very easy to happen to a lot of women, where even though there are some general basic understandings about men, right? Same way there's some general basic understandings about women, you can never let that cause you to forget that every person is their own individual. And you have to learn that individual. It's okay to come in with foundational principles, but you must be flexible with those things and understand it may not apply to that man. So again, flipping it for a second, if I'm speaking to men, there are some men who have been told by women in their family that women in general love flowers, right? And so he may come into every situation thinking flowers is always going to be a welcomed gesture that women love. But there are some of you out there who don't give a damn about no flowers. Like, you don't care for flowers. Yeah, they're nice and everything, but they don't do for you. Shoot, you might be allergic to some. Like, it simply does not apply to you. And if he comes in with that and an unwillingness to be flexible, and I think this is very important to understand, when we do things for somebody, so even if you are going to make an assumption, because sometimes people go their own route with what they want to do or how they want to pour into their partner. And sometimes they actually get something right. Like it actually works out beautifully, right? So that's great. But then in the instances that it doesn't, do not take offense. Do not be insulted. Rather, view it as, okay, now I know this doesn't work for them. Take it as an opportunity to learn. So every action that we're doing for somebody, every conversation that we're having with them, this is an opportunity to get to know them better in a way that allows us to fine tune pouring into their needs and desires. All right. But if you notice with everything here, it's always going to be about communication. If you're willing to talk, everything can be worked out. But again, I have to stress, do not take personal offense when your attempts don't land. All right. Just learn from it, make the adjustments, move forward. All right. So let's keep this going. And another thing you should never assume with a man is that you can't talk to him. Okay. Now, we've been highlighting communication, and I made sure to include this because there's a lot of you ladies have experienced relationships or situations with men where the man's communication was horrible, right? And there was a lack of communication on his end. And some of you have had that experience repeatedly, which has now led you to feel like the majority of men, if not all, are horrible communicators, right? Or are unwilling to hear you out when it comes to certain things that you're trying to express. And then, unfortunately, if you carry that perspective with you, and now you're projecting this onto this new man that you're dating, you're not allowing yourself to actually discover if he can handle these conversations. And let me say this, if you're dating a man who is serious about you and he wants to be there for you, but you hold back because you have this unresolved trauma, disappointment, hurt, fear of communication with men, right? You holding back on him can then make him feel less loved, less valued. Maybe you're not that interested. It can throw things off. Okay. Now, with the guy who actually isn't trying to be serious or, does have horrible communication, well, to him, it's like, man, you just made his life easier. You're not exposing what he's lacking in. You're not exposing what he's trying to do here with you. You know what I'm saying? You've made it 100 times easier because you are not attempting to communicate. All right. Now, I have a video on how to communicate with men, which I'll put it at the end of the video for you to be able to go watch it. So there are things to be mindful of in having discussions with a guy, but it starts with you being willing to take that step. And if you are struggling in that area, man, there's a lot of hit in my spirit moments today. I don't know what's going on, but here's another one right now. I just want many of you to understand. Remember that communication is a two-way street. And for some of you, your struggles in communication with a man, whether you realize it or not, is how you come across in those conversations. And again, because some of you have had negative experiences and that energy, that spirit has not been resolved and released, it comes out of you in these conversations with men that can be very off-putting, that can cause a man to shut down, and you may not see it that way. Like, this is just an example, and I'm not saying it applies to everybody, but you'll hear sometimes a man might say, "Oh, she's too difficult." And the woman is like, "I'm not difficult. You just can't take my opinion, or you don't like a strong woman that can speak for herself." And it's like, no, 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 no. There's some guys who indeed that's their problem, but there's many situations where it's not you being strong and being able to speak for yourself. It's how you go about it. It's the energy that comes out of you when it happens, right? And there's this very, whether you realize it or not, defensive energy. Um, and instead it attacks before you can be attacked. So it's a defense mechanism, essentially. So we won't get too deep into it. I'll just say, listen, be willing to make sure you go through the process of healing, to release these things, remove these things, so that it will enable you to have better, healthier communication with not just a man, but with anybody in your life, anybody that you come across, okay? But you have to be mindful of how you engage rather than just look at, well, the man this, the man that, whatever the case may be. And then before I move on to the next point, again, also understand that there will be some scenarios out there where a man could be genuine about being with you, and have genuine intentions, all those things. But he has his own issues he needs to heal from that is blocking his ability to communicate. Now, here's the thing. Even if that's the case where it's like he's genuine and serious about you, but he has this issue, that doesn't mean ignore it and still be with him. Like, all right, cool, we can recognize you're a good dude, but you're not ready to have a healthy relationship until you're able to have better communication. So I need you to go get help for that. And then once he's making progress, you guys can come together. But if you get together and ignore that and then try to fix it later, it's going to be a lot harder that way. I'm going to tell you that. It's going to be a lot harder that way. So try not to make that mistake. All right, so let's keep this going. A few more to go. And another big assumption you should not make with a man, never make with a man, is what his intentions are with you. All right. So we talked earlier about not assuming he's officially your man. But before we even get to that, right, it's really trying to understand what his intentions are. And here's the thing. I feel like some of you know this, or a lot of you know this, but I just have to kind of repeat it. Listen, there's a lot of men out there who may find you attractive, may like you, right? May have no problem providing some things for you. Yet their intention will never be to be anything more than just enjoying time with you or experiencing you. Okay. And so you have to understand that it's not simply about a man coming with good gestures. Okay. It's about, are you two really on the same page? Now, listen, for the sake of argument, I always say, because some of you will say to me, Stephan, I'm not looking for anything serious. I want it to be something simple and casual. Listen, I'm not here to argue or discuss whether you should or shouldn't. If that's what you're on and you're generally okay with that, so be it. But this just made me realize something. Let's flip this scenario for a second. So let's just say you are the woman who you just want something casual right now. You just want some companionship. You don't need no pressure of relationship, right? Man comes your way, and he may seem like he just wants to enjoy himself as well. But again, don't assume, because what if he's coming to be serious? What if he's coming to lock you down, okay? And now, if you entertain, it's like no matter which side you're on, if you entertain someone who's not on the same page as you, we are opening the door to messiness, all right? We are opening the door to potential drama and headache. So if you want casual, but he wants serious, and you let him in, and you let him in too far, that can turn into a whole drawn out mess that you will wish you never got yourself into. Just the same if we flip it back and you want something serious and he wants something casual, and we know how that's going to go. So either way, it's about making sure you both are on the same page and you don't entertain people who want something different. All right. And sometimes that will mean not being able to enjoy the person that you really like because they just want something different. So again, have that discussion, and the earlier the better. That's the other thing, man. Like, so here's the thing. There's a lot of women, a lot of people who at some point they finally have that discussion, right? The problem is if you wait too long and now you find out, to make it easier, let me paint it like this. You end up meeting this guy, you really like him. You guys are hitting it off. He seems to be pouring into you, whatever, right? You don't ask him right away because you don't want to rock the boat. Finally, you get to a point where maybe your girlfriend, somebody's like, you got to ask him, you need to find out. You finally bring it up. But by this point, let's say y'all already had sex, y'all been spending a lot of time together, you're talking on the phone every day, so you're really accustomed to this treatment. And now, because you're so drawn in and attached, even when he tells you, well, I don't want a real relationship, I'm not trying to be serious, this is never going to go anywhere, you may now struggle on how to best handle things because you allowed yourself to get too in deep before you gained the clarity that you needed about the situation. So you have to make sure the earlier, the better. And it needs to be no later than whatever that point is that you know you're going to get a little caught up. You're going to get a little attached. Okay? So if that's sex, again, we're not going back. Right now, we're not discussing if you should be having sex at all. We're just saying, because again, I always acknowledge the fact that whether people waiting or not, some people are going to end up doing it. All right. So if that line is, if you know you're a woman that gets attached because you've been intimate with a man, then you need to find out what's going on before that. You know, if you know spending weeks on end with each other is going to get you it, you need to do it before that. Whatever it is, do it before that and avoid it becoming a much worse situation. All right. So another assumption to never make with a man is that he will see your value. Okay. So we just talked about being mindful of not crossing lines where you get very attached. And the reality is sometimes, and I say we because it can happen to men and women, and a lot of this stuff really can go either or. But anyways, a lot of times we allow lines to be crossed in an effort or an attempt to gain more favor from this person. So sometimes the woman sleeps with the man because she feels like, well, if I put it on him, it's gonna make him want me. It's gonna make him see how good he has it here, and he won't want to go anywhere else. If I cook for him, if I do this, if I do that, whatever the case may be. And in taking that approach, you're assuming that he is going to see your value by you providing these additional things. And the reality is those types of things is not what shows a man your value. Like if he's truly a man who is into you or the man for you, your value comes from your energy, your spirit, your character, the way that you guys can talk to each other. It's before we even get into doing the extra stuff, right? I'm not saying there's not a place for certain things. I'm just saying that it starts with the people, the individuals, right? And who they are at their core. And that needs to be discovered before we start crossing lines of doing too much, trying to quote unquote win them over. Or for some people, even being something that you're not trying to win him over. Now you're not just he's not going to not only see your value, you're not even presenting your real value if you're essentially trying to become something else that you're not. Either way, we have to understand that no matter how much you like somebody, no matter how much you want to be with them, no matter how much you wish this can work out, some people are just not wired to either see it, or they may see it, but they're not wired to handle it, right? They're not the ones that you can align yourself with. And that can be a tough pill to swallow when it happens with someone that you really, really like. Like when it happens with some random guy that you ain't really care for, you just gave him a chance just cause. All right, it's easy. Like, all right, cool. It just ain't gonna work here. We're gonna keep it moving. But when it happens with that guy that you're really into, that maybe he's so attractive or he's so this, he's so that, it gets tough. It gets tough. But you have to look at it as, all right, if he can't see it or handle it, then remaining here is only blocking you from receiving the man who can. All right. So he now becomes the current guy, a distraction, a roadblock. Get it out the way. Get it out the way. It's not if it's not serving you any good. What's the point? What's the point and what's the purpose? You know what I'm saying? And again, I know it's easier said than done. I gotta encourage you as best as possible, you know? So be mindful of that and do not assume that he will, or anybody, when I say anybody, someone will see your value. Someone out there will see your value, okay? But many won't. The same way, bottom line, to make it real simple and easy, everyone's not gonna like you, and that's fine because you're not gonna like everybody either, okay? And what's fair is fair. All right, and a, a big one I had to put on this list of things you should never assume with a man is that he's your future husband. Now, hear me out. Hear me out. All right. Because I know there are stories that exist out there of women who met a man and believed this is her future husband, and it ended up being her future husband, right? So I'm in no way saying that's not possible. What I'm telling you, or I'm cautioning you with, is making that assumption on your own, okay? Because what I've seen happen in so many cases is that by making this assumption, for whatever the reason is, sometimes it's a matter of, there was a story one time of a woman who just ended a relationship. She was hurt, she was devastated, and one night she kind of reached her wits end and she prayed. She said, God, please, I can't do this anymore. Send me the man for me, make it plain and clear. And then she said the next day she went out to some event with some friends. And while she was sitting down at the table, this man walked through the door, and it was like the light coming from the sky beaming on him, and the music playing. Like, it was this moment like, oh my gosh, who is this man, right? And then they start talking and they hit it off. And for her, it was like, this must be him, because she just prayed about this last night. She just made this request to God. And here comes this amazing man who believes in God, who's a man of God, right? This must be it. And then I think 3 months into dating, the whole thing fell apart. And unfortunately, it led to her being mad at God. And it was like, well, God, why'd you set me up like this? Why did you let this man come in my life if this wasn't it? All these different things. And one of the things I had to say to her, there was a lot of things I had to say to her, but one of the things I had to say to her was, you're mad at God, but God never told you he sent him. You assumed that. You came to your own conclusion by connecting your own dots that this must be the guy. And you can say, oh, but I just prayed about it. Well, sometimes the devil can hear your prayers too if you're praying out loud. And so, there's this great saying, when God's going to bring you the original, the devil will bring you an imposter. So my thing is, whether devil, coincidence, whatever it is, the point is, just because the timing seems so divine doesn't mean it actually was. Okay? And making assumptions like that, now she's, one, attaching herself to something that wasn't really for her. Two, it created tension between her and God, a disconnect between her and God, which eventually she was able to work out. But it took time before she even came to the realization that, okay, you know what? I didn't ask God. So what I'm saying here is, you got to pray. You got to talk to God. You got to connect with your spirit. Okay? Do not jump to conclusions. And again, for me, I've heard so many different stories. I've heard maybe the woman is having all these dreams about the man. So she assumes, well, if he's on my heart like this and he's in my dreams, then this must be it. It's like, and again, in some cases, that might be the case. I'm just saying, don't assume. Don't assume. Don't just rely on other people's interpretations of it. Don't rely on your own interpretation. Go to God. Talk to God. And if you say to me, but Steph, how do you know you're talking to God? Okay, well, that's a different discussion we have to have. And we have to, lay out how to, at least I can lay out for you how I go about it. But the bottom line is, don't assume. That's it. Don't assume he's your husband. Please verify spiritually. Thank you for watching this video. I pray it was helpful to you. Be sure to watch this one over here on how to communicate with a man. 7 amazing tips. That doesn't mean everything you say will be liked, right? It's not about what you're saying, it's about how you're saying it. And so what's going to help you with getting your energy in check is